On behalf of the Lone Star Conference, I'm Chris Dew with Lubbock Christian University as we get prepared for the 2019-2020 Lubbock Christian University basketball season. This is the LSC Basketball Online Media Day. Todd Duncan, the head coach of the Chaparrals, joining us. We're going to have Rashaan Proctor joining us a little bit later to get his perspective on the upcoming season. But Coach, you lose Isaac Azaritt, you lose Brennan Fowler. Rashaan, who's going to be joining us, is the only senior on this squad. Is it much of a rebuilding process coming off a regional appearance? You'd like to reload and not really start from scratch, but you got a lot of new players on the squad.
Well, knowing going into last year, Brennan and Isaac, were 1 year, and then we're replacing really two guys that are hard to replace off the court. You just try to do it differently. There's not too many Brennan Fowlers walking around, so you just try to get the best guys that you can to replace those guys. You lost experience, you lost obviously a lot of points that you were counting on every night, and then you lost a lot of leadership in the locker room and off the court. So we tried to be intentional with getting some junior college guys like a Lloyd Daniels, a transfer like a Parker Hicks, and then we feel like some of our freshmen and other guys are just going to have to get better and be ready to play once the season starts.
Other coaches around the conference going to be turning up their volume when I ask you this next question, but X's and O's, has it changed much from last year to this year?
Well, when you have a low post presence like Brennan, it's not a mystery that that's where you're going to try to get the ball. And then a guy like Isaac who can create on his own, come off screens, get to the basket. You're trying to put them in places where they can do those things. So, yeah, it may change to some degree. You still have your identity and how you want to play and the type shots you want to get and those type things. But there's no doubt those guys were such a dominant force inside with Brennan, and such gives us so many options with Isaac on the perimeter that, it's going to be different, but guys will step up and hopefully there'll be some options that we use with those guys that'll still be available to us.
The pros of playing in the Lone Star Conference?
It forces you to be at your best, which I think competition, really even in the Heartland, was that way, and Division II basketball in itself is that way, because every night that if you don't come ready to play mentally, physically, emotionally engaged in what you're about to do, that you're going to take a loss. And so now it's just every night. I think we go to Angelo, our fourth game of the season, obviously start with the Rocky Mountain Challenge the first weekend. So we don't get to really ease into the season at all. So it forces you to prepare and to be ready and get these guys ready, because you're not going to have time to overlook anybody or, just work out the kinks in an easy game. So it's going to force that for sure.
Coach, I always look at it as kind of like when Texas Christian University jumped into the Big 12. A lot of people saw their bowl success on football and thought, well, if they had to play that schedule, those type of caliber teams on a week-by-week basis, they may not be as good. And, they get that one Rose Bowl win that they used to get when they were in their prior conference, and it's a private school going into a conference with a lot of state schools. I'm sure you could relate to that for the fact that maybe the naysayers against Lubbock Christian are going to say, well, if they have to play the Tarleton States and the traditional originating Lone Star Conference squads on a game-by-game basis, they may not be as tough from start to finish, and the challenges a private school has against a state school. How do you sum that up and also sell that to a kid when you're recruiting?
Well, I think last year and the year before, there was a long stretch of the season where we had the toughest strength of schedule in the country. So we've never really shied away from playing a tough schedule. With WT and Angelo, UTPB, these schools that are, Eastern or that are right around us anyway, it's made sense to put them on our schedule from a regional perspective anyway. So from that perspective, not a lot has changed. We've always been willing to play the tougher opponents. I just think you just try to sell it from the best place. You're going to get to play great competition night in, night out when you're recruiting. I think a true competitor wants to know how good they can be, and the only way you find that out is to play those people. Eventually, to get to a national tournament, to get to the regional, you're going to have the schedule strength that allows you to be in the conversation when it comes to the regional ranking, and you're only going to do that by winning games and by playing good competition. So now it's just kind of built in for us. We're not necessarily having to go and be intentional about it. It's just there in the worked into the schedule.
Coach, best of luck this upcoming season. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Well, as we continue on with our LSC Basketball Online Media Day, Rashaan Proctor, the only senior member for the Shaps this season. And, you know, you transfer in from New Mexico Military Institute last year, your first season with the Shaps, and then all of a sudden it's you by yourself, the only senior on this squad. How does that change your leadership role?
Big time for sure, because you know, we were supposed to have a squad of, you know, more than just one senior, and, you know, things went down and, you know, I ended up the lone senior, but that's fine, and I'm having to build myself up as a leader, and Coach Duncan and Coach Arms are helping me as well.
How's the team goals? I mean, when you're meeting with Coach Duncan and he's got the grease board out, and what's some of those team goals that he's really emphasizing, and, you know, does he have to drive those into you, or you have the same aspirations? Talk about the team goals.
You know, our number one goal is to win, you know, all our games. We'll do our best to win many of those games and, you know, make it to the regional tournament again. That'd be big for us. And most of the time I do share goals with him. We line up pretty good with each other. He has a bit more experience than me, so, you know, he's always teaching me things, you know, that I might not know now.
Lone Star Conference, new conference. When I mention the Lone Star Conference, what are some of the things that jump out, especially, you know, the games, you had some tough games last year against some LSC opponents. Now those opponents probably more meaningful games. I know Coach would drive in the importance last year. It was against an LSC squad just because of the regional rankings, and the wins were very beneficial when they did occur. But now those are conference games. Like I said, when I say LSC, what stands out?
Definitely a bigger conference that we have, 18 teams, I believe. It's a lot of games and tough opponents. So we're definitely going to have to execute every game, you know, and play our best ball for sure. Small margin for us to win.
Well, best of luck this season.
Thank you.
So that's a look at the Lubbock Christian University Shaps getting ready for their first season in the Lone Star Conference. On behalf, again, of the Lone Star Conference, I'm Chris Dew for Lubbock Christian University, and this has been the 2019-2020 edition of the LSC Basketball Online Media Day.